Good afternoon. Design Review Board 2 public meeting of September 11th, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on any specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. The case planner will will announce the appeal period after the DRB decision. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
Mr. Garagos? Absent. Mr. Malikian?
Here.
Absent. Mr. I'm here. Mr. Zarithian? Absent. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on September 4th of 2008. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on an item not a part of the agenda this evening? Nope. Do you have any cards? Nope. Okay. Seeing none, we're down to the review calendar. Staff at this time doesn't have any announcements. There's nothing on the consent calendar as well.
Okay. All right. Then let's start. The first item on the agenda is 2 PDR 2007-089-B. I guess it's 368 West Lexington Drive.
Yes.
It was continued from the last year.
Yes. Mr. Chair, good afternoon, members of the board. The next case is 2-PDR-2007-089-B. Project location is 368 West Lexington. Mr. Chair, before I go on to the project proposal, I'd like to go over some of the historic findings that staff has made for this particular site. 368 West Lexington Avenue is a craftsman-style single-family residence built in 1920. After reviewing city documents and visiting the site, planning staff has determined that the property would not be considered a historic resource under CEQA and does not appear to be eligible for listing in the Glendale Register, as it is not a result of one of the best examples of a craftsman-style architecture in its neighborhood and does not possess any outstanding architectural elements reflecting that style or the period of construction. This property, was assigned a California Historic Resource Code of 6L in the Glendale Craftsman Architectural Survey, indicating that it was determined ineligible for the local listing or designation through the local government review process. Staff consulted with the State Historic Preservation Office and learned that the state is reluctant to determine that this small grouping of historic properties are eligible for the California Historic Register districts unless a small grouping conveys significant contextual information, such as having direct connection to important aspects of the city's development history. With that said, does the board have any comments or direct any comments? No? Okay. I will proceed with the project proposal. Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the board, let me roughly go through over the submitted plans, what the view is, actually the board is viewing at this moment. This is the proposed site plan, proposed parking plan, roof plan sections, proposed first and second floor plan, along with the perspective. This is the existing demolition plan, along with the proposed elevations that reflect the board's changes, last viewed, a proposed site plan, and these are the two elevation renderings from the previous time of submittal. The board last viewed this project on November 15th of 2007 and gave this project a return for redesign. The board voted 3-0 to have this project. At the end of the report, I will go over the board's comments from that previous meeting. The project proposal is to construct a new 5-unit multifamily dwelling unit on a lot that is 6,704 square feet. This project will include 2 stories and consist of a semi-subterranean parking garage with 11 spaces. The project includes demolishing this single-family home, which I just. This project is located in the R1250 zone, high-density residential zone. This project is exempt from sequence review. On to the summary of site planning. The overall location of the building and garage access appears to be appropriate to the project site and context, particularly that the overall private and common open space have been achieved with the intent of the zoning code. If I may direct your attention to the landscape plan, it best clearly shows the common outdoor space, and it is well landscaped. Staff feels that it's well landscaped in this area surrounding the perimeter of the proposed structure. On to mass and scale. The overall project mass and scale appears compatible in its relation to the site neighborhood. There are other multifamily buildings within the neighborhood that have 3 stories. The subject property proposes only a 2-story building. Furthermore, the architecture is consistent with the Spanish style and appears well designed and appropriate for this neighborhood. The following 4 comments are from the previous hearing on November 15th. The comments and conditions were, number 1, restudy the front entrance to eliminate walkways and hardscapes and incorporate more landscaping. The applicant has redesigned the front entrance and has eliminated most of the hardscape from the previous submittal. A new landscape plan was also submitted to address this comment. Or comment number 2, review the design elements to introduce a style and have elements of that style be reflected and incorporated into the design. The applicant has chosen a Spanish style. Wooden corbels, recessed windows, and trellises have been introduced along with new railing details to help communicate that Spanish style. A new color palette consists of warm earth tones with smooth stucco. We do have a material board that's allowed to distribute. On to comment number 3, provide a new landscape plan. The applicant then has provided a new landscape plan. The final comment for the board was consider meeting with the building and safety plan checker to discuss new ICBU requirements. The applicant has stated that he has met with the building plan checker to go over those requirements. That pretty much concludes my presentation. If the board has any questions, I can ask.
I have some questions, and then I'll go ahead and ask the architect. I need a section. Some of the functions that I see in the garage, I don't think it really works. I'm not sure how we're going to address this at this level. I just see recycle area. There's no trash area. I see that and I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure, but usually you want to have the handicap and the striping to have its own separate backup, but if it's overlapping, I don't know how that's going to get addressed. Sometimes they do allow it. And then also you got end stalls that do not have that additional strike area that is required. So I'm not sure some of those kinds of issues that I see. And then also the landscape area, the way that they're showing it is 9-inch deep. Mm-hmm. But they got all these stuff. So should we? I'm not sure. Those are more of a zoning questions, but there are other stuff that I've seen that I think may be problematic. So I'm not sure how we're going to address that. Do we just continue with the meeting and then let that resolve later on?
Are you questioning the overall functionality or just straight zoning code matters?
Well, yeah, there's stuff that I know that you're going to need and it's not there. So I'm not sure once you put them in there, are they going to be able to have the loss of parking placed in somewhere else? Is it going to have to? Do they need to modify that? How are they going to?
Okay, I will address them. I can look over a few.
Okay.
I know that the applicant has provided, I believe, a couple more spaces of additional parking.
Additional parking.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's some
That's all I needed to know. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I only have one card. Is it Oxen or Oxen? Yeah. Bob Kenyon.
Good afternoon, Board, Chairman. My name is Oxen Babekania. I'm the principal of Oxen Associates, and our designer has done an excellent job in revisiting this project. And we did a great deal just because of we having a tree in front of the existing driveway, which we're going to use. We changed the whole design just to accommodate so we don't cut that existing tree. So we're working with Stephanie and members. We came up, we did lots of work to clean up the structure so it looks much beautiful and much presentative. And also we did a new landscape plan, so it basically all over we have plants and benches. And so I think, in my opinion, overall it's an excellent design, and hopefully the board will think so. And also we had the chance to talk to the building and safety, so it's all per code. So any question I can help.
I have a question. I don't know if my colleagues have any.
Well, I had the same question about the depth of the planter beds.
Why don't
So
you
you
go
can go
ahead.
ahead and...
My initial comment was in regards to the parking spaces.
Yes.
There are certain things that are missing from the actual function, trash, the backup, I know the electrical room and so forth. So I'm not sure how we're going to address that.
This is part of the final design that we have been working design.
So you are aware of that if it
We're very
affects
much
the
aware of those.
parking?
Yes.
Okay, if it affects the parking, it may trigger that you coming back to us.
We
and
have
so forth.
already talked about that. We know
Okay.
what needs to be done.
Okay. The other major, the main concern other than the design is the common area. You're showing a 9-inch depression on the slab.
Yeah.
How does that work with all the landscaping and the trees and everything that you're putting there? They're actual, I understand that you're putting in,
We have a section through that.
well, the section is just showing a 9-inch
Yeah.
depression there, and one,
So slab is 9-inch depressed, so we can do all the earthwork there for the planting and sidewalks, whatever we can put up there, so it will be earth tone and grasses there.
Yeah, but you've got trees.
you got 24-inch box trees and everything.
Yes, trees, we have a 24-inch box trees there,
So are they going to be above?
above that slab where the trees are only. But for grass, we have 9 inches for accommodating for the grass, for the walking, everything else.
Okay, but when you say it's above and where?
Above the
You're not
slab.
showing any planter, he's not showing any planter, so...
No, but the planters will be sitting on that 9-inch, so we have 9-inch there plus, let's say, 18 inches above. So it's going to be all 24-inch, but
So you will have planters there?
you bet, for the trees you should have.
So is the idea to have the trees in planters or in pots?
Basically, it's up to the owner how much of cost he wants to do. We have the trees there, we can put in a concrete boxes, or we can have pots, whichever you guys think is better to do, or the owner thinks cheaper for him to do.
As a normal practice, when you're showing the site plan, you need to indicate all the site conditions, and rather than transferring all the, you're showing the planters here in the site plan, but on the actual floor plan, that gives you a little bit better idea of how the relationship between the planters and the units. You're transferring it onto the landscape plan, and landscape plan is different than what you're showing on your site plan. So that's why, that was the confusion. So, okay, well, we'll talk about that. Okay. Any other?
I just have a question for my colleagues. Were you on the board when this was originally submitted?
I was not here.
But Mr. Malikny,
Yes,
you were?
I was.
Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I remember seeing it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, public session is closed.
jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, the landscape, the problem with the depth of the planters is a really big issue for me, because they're either going to have to lower the roof of that garage if they really are going to have trees, or have giant pots. But I think we really need trees here between these properties, and putting them in a pot above the ground, you know, what happens is you can put some trees in there, but they're not going to get more than, 7 feet or 6 feet. So I don't know any tree that can grow in a 24-inch pot and be of any size. So, and they're not even showing planters on the plan. So I think we're going to need to see that in detail of how they're going to accomplish that.
The only place they're showing it is in their site plan, which when you go and get into the larger plan, it's not shown there.
The other problem is that I think from the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there something in the code that raised planters can't be counted in the open space calculations? And if that's the case, they might run into trouble with that. No, am I remembering that incorrectly?
We'll go ahead and check that, but
And I would think it should be, but I just didn't remember.
The common open space has to be eligible in the lab.
Common open space,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So I don't know if any of those are in the common open space. But if they are, and then they're going to do raised planters, that might just be a problem for them.
Any comments on the design?
I'll reserve the right to say something. I will just say that I think that if they're going to use color, you see on the elevations, the differences in color really adds a lot of visual interest. But if you look at their actual color board, it's almost no different. So they're going to need to do something, I think, just change the colors to make it more contrast.
Okay. Okay.
If it's going to serve that function.
You're saying that the colors on the rendering
Yeah.
are vibrant, but the actual samples...
Yeah, if you look at these two, there's not much difference in shade. It's
So a
small
good
thing.
picture might not actually be what develops on the job site.
If this
that's
is
the color.
accurate as to the color, it's not going to look like that. It's going to look like part of it got dirty. It's a little bit darker.
If I may just ask, since I was not here for the original submittal, it's sort of incumbent upon me to look at the old plans, and ask, is there an improvement, more detail? Offhand, a quick look says there is. The old plan had kind of, I'm trying to pick my words, but flat walls. I mean, it helps that this rendering is at an angle, too, because that gives some dimensionality to it. So, Mr. Malikian, having seen that old one and asking it to be redesigned?
Well, one of the comments that I just want to make is, I remember at school when we used to do presentations, one of the requirements for us to do presentations, and professors would ask us, would be a case studies. Bring examples of similar architecture or some sort of a kind of a thought process and photographs of different similar or somewhat of the style that or the concept that we're looking for, and trying to explain by everything that we propose or we do comes from somewhere. There is a basis. It's been done before, and a lot of times when we get applicants that come and say, we're going to do Spanish style, I think it would be beneficial to them and to us to kind of understand where they're coming from. Simply using certain materials, to me, does not really justify the style of architecture that at any particular style. There's several concerns that I have on this. I'm glad that the perspective is provided, because that was one of the things that I wasn't able to understand were, what are these elements there? Are they deeper? Are they, are they just graphic? Are they just change of color? And when you start looking at this, it's fairly substantial and the depth is done, but then when you look at the plan has nothing to do with this. I mean, I don't see anywhere the columns occurring on this floor. I don't see any columns there, so I'm not really understanding where this is happening. And then I wish there was another perspective, because the elevations are not really drawn properly and the depth is not really shown. And so sometimes when the requirements are given to the applicants, those are the minimum that is required to applicants to bring for us to understand, and for us to be able to have a better feel of what they're proposing. And just providing the minimum information really does not help, especially that you wait for 2 months or 3 months to come in front of us and you only have 10 minutes of presentation. You want to provide as much information as possible so we can make the best educated judgment, rather than just because we don't understand a certain corner, we don't make a hasty decision and sending it back for more information. For me, this is really important, because now I kind of picture what this is all about. But then when I start looking at this, how do these work? I mean, what is this? Is this a trellis? Are these corbels that are protruded? What is the depth of this? Is it truly, is it this deep? Is it only 6 inches? I don't understand those. And also, there are other elements there that I'm not sure if it really addresses the true style of architecture that they're and I've always been a big advocate of pick a style, stick to that. That will help you guide through all the details that you will need to do to be able to develop a quality work. Air conditioning. Where are we going to be putting the air conditioning units? And I can't seem to find it. I may be missing it, or I don't see it. It has a pitch roof. It's probably going to get cut out. It's going to be placed in, so obviously the elevations are going to get modified. So I'm not sure if the architect is there and he can explain to that later on. We get these kinds of details. What is this doing? I mean, what happens if I just put my finger on this? Is it going to make a difference in the elevation or not? Is it a substantial element? Why isn't this a full casement window, and the window is already arched, and it becomes this becomes a wood column that is part of the window and becomes a part of this detail. This is the front of, I believe, no, I'm sorry, that's the front of the house. But just like the front, how they've addressed the front, the arch, and the back, do we do that? Do we do that to every window there? I mean, is that something that we want to add? And it's a very nice detail that you commonly see in that. Some of the other main elements of the Spanish-style architectures, you get a lot of plaster, a lot of heavy plaster, thicker walls, and the details and the windows are set in more, and the plaster is wrapped in. You don't get sharp details of that. You get more of a handcrafted elements there. And do windows occur based on the function, or do windows occur based on the style that we're picking? So where do we go with that? The ends of the roof, and so the information that is given to us when it's really at a point that, to me, from here to here, there's a very slight change. I don't see a substantial enough change for me to say, okay, this was awful, this is great. Obviously, it's going towards the right direction, but yet it's not really there for me to say, this is it. I'm gonna okay this, because I think if the changes from this level came to this point, I think there's definitely potential to make this a lot better project. Trash, parking backup, the clearances for the parking, AC units, the landscaping, the 9-inch depression. You have Yeah, ADA issues here with the site strike area for the gate. So all of those things that I see that will eventually, and I don't have a scale on this, but the clearance here for the path and going around, and how does this work when you're going to be required to have a second exit from there? And if you are, you're not. How are the divisions between the units? Are we going to have separated, blocks of private area, or is it just going to be open for everybody to use? I mean, those things, I think, we're putting benches here, and are people going to be able to come around and exit out from here? I mean, is that really the intent? Is it really going to be a private outdoor space? Do we have enough private outdoor? So there's a lot of these questions that I think, I don't think it's really been kind of pulled together, especially the timing that since that review to this review, to me, it's not there, and I don't see it, and there are a lot of nice details there, but I think it definitely needed to be carried through. Perspective really helps, but to me, it's just a photograph.
But is that perspective? Is that the east side of the house? Is that
that's this side of the house, and has nothing to do. The perspective has nothing to do with this, and neither the perspective or the elevation has to do with the floor plan. So I'm not sure what we're going to look at. Are we going to go at every corner and we're going to say we like this detail, but maybe this is a wood post? What happens to this? And maybe that once this is addressed, then the plans need to get addressed with these conditions. Then the elevation, because the column is completely different. It's coming to this point. You have a much heavier plaster. It's just more of a plaster look that comes down. So there's these details. I mean, that's what we're approving here. So I'm not sure exactly if we want to continue it for them to clean it up and come back, and then we address all of these conditions, or do we have enough comments? Do you have any other concerns, or?
I have a question for staff.
Well, if I might say, and I'd bring staff into this, the perspective, quite kind of pleasing, has detail and stuff, but actually, are there any floor plans out here that actually are that building? Is that building accurately described in these floor plans?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if we actually, and I apologize because I'm not sure my mic is functioning well, so I'll try to speak up. I'm not sure that we have analyzed that perspective, and I'm not even sure when we received that perspective in our analysis. Maybe the planner can tell us.
Representation. Some are accurate, some are slightly inaccurate. It is something that we review just for conceptual, and it's supposed to, for color purposes as well.
Yeah.
In this case, it is, as the board has mentioned, is not entirely accurate with regards to the steps and.
But I'll just go on record. I'm dangerous with that. I see a poster of Pam Anderson, and I'm ready to buy.
No, we understand, and we're very sensitive to that point. We typically rely on the rendered elevations in the plans, and we focus on coordination between those because our sense is that the board is typically looking at the elevations primarily for the design of the project. We don't spend a whole lot of time typically with the renderings. Often we will work with an applicant in our meetings with the line drawings, and the perspectives come later. So I'm personally less familiar with that particular perspective. It's actually not online, so I can't even bring it up and look at it closely as you're talking.
I appreciate that, and I understand that. I was just saying that since I was not at the original hearing on this, that rendering was persuasive to me that many of the conditions that were noted had been met. When I looked at that elevation, it was less persuasive. That's all.
Yeah, understood. There are a couple of things that I want to mention. If there are particular pieces that, if the board is inclined to say, okay, well, the project that's shown in the perspective is reasonably acceptable with modest changes, we could actually condition the project, and we'll have very clear direction that the project that we're approving or continuing or asking for redesign will be based on this perspective, and we'd like to see the elevations and plans altered so they are coordinated with that perspective. That gives us very clear direction. As you likely saw in the staff report, and some of us also weren't present at that initial hearing, so what we did was we looked at the board's comments from the previous meeting. We looked very carefully at the previous plans that were submitted, compared them, as Board Member Carter mentioned at more of the beginning of the discussion. We compared those plans with the current plans. We found significant enough improvement to encourage the applicant to move forward, and we're also basing our evaluation on other similar projects on the level of craftsmanship and detail and care that other similar projects that the board has approved in the past. We understand that there's always a recognition and a desire for improvement, and the board is always improving their standards, which makes it more difficult for an applicant that is submitting for redesign, having submitted to a previous board maybe a year ago. So that's a challenge that we always have.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Is this project fall under the new ordinance or the old ordinance? In other words, do we have the option of returning this for redesign, or can we only pass it or not
when
pass
was it submitted?
This was filed under the old ordinance.
So we could return it for redesign because it's only been back. Okay, well that's good to know, because that takes the pressure off of denying it or approving it. But what you brought up is very interesting, and I think we always need to be mindful that an architectural rendering is a sales tool, and that's really all it is. Okay. It's something that maybe gives us an idea of what their vision is, which is helpful, but the purpose of it is not to be accurate necessarily, but to convince us and to convince the neighborhood that this is what the building's going to look like. But when it starts moving down the channel of the city and goes to plan check, that goes away completely, and all they're looking at are the plans. So that's the thing. That the plans trump any rendering. And often, as you see in this one, the renderings, for obvious reasons, they don't show the buildings around it. We've had hillside projects come in with renderings where they're on the plains of Kansas. There was actually an interesting article in the New Yorker recently about renderings that architects put up that are actually impossible to build. But they use them to try to convince a neighborhood that this is what they're going to get. So,
here's some of the things, and some of the things that I marked and the issues that I have, and it's not consistent with the plans. I'm looking at this as the basis, and I'm trying to understand what they're doing. And so when I don't understand this, because the plans are not drawn properly, so I go to the rendering, and the rendering is not drawn. So my question is this a trellis or not? What is this wall? It's shown here, but it's not shown there. And now, if this wall comes in, I don't want to draw on this, but is this going to block this whole thing? Is this the wall that it's going to come out? I mean, this thing, I see something there. I'm not clear what it is. Is it drawn proportionally or not? The arches that it's drawn, and the depth, the only way that you can understand the depth is from here. The arches that are drawn, you're going to have a floor, obviously, second floor. Yeah, and you have a floor structure that has a depth. So based on that, you cannot have this depression where the floor occurs. So the floor has to have, the depression has to happen below the floor. So what that means is this arc is going to get flattened. So are we at a point to say, let's forget about this arc, let's just have a nice depression and nice, maybe a wooden corbel or something, an element there. So thoughts like this hasn't really been implemented in the project. You have a balcony that it comes, and then the extension that is coming out it's a piece of plywood. And that detail, it's not really carried through here. And in the way it's shown, it's just a piece of plywood, and the rafter comes out and holds the plywood out. So I'm not sure if that's the way it's supposed to be, or does the floor has to come out and the corbels occur at the bottom of that. So that detail, obviously the AC, there's no plan shown or anywhere. So it's going to affect, and just simply saying the AC, it's going to affect the elevations, it's going to affect the roof plan. And then you got all the other issues there, and you got the ADA, and you got the plans that are not really showing this information. So the reason I'm a little bit harsh on this is because I spend a lot of time putting plans together, and then I make sure and I take my time and I go through it. Obviously, not all the plans are perfect, but yet you want to have somewhat of a coordinated set of plans. And when we get stuff like this, then and you start thinking about the lack of coordination and the details that I see here, I really don't know if this is going to be another spec apartment complex or something similar to the rendering, which I prefer what I see there than I see on the elevations. But we should use that as a reference of kind of understanding three-dimensionally what it's going to look like.
Well, like I said, I'm not comfortable saying use the rendering because I know that I've heard a fact that plan check, that the rendering goes away after here. Nobody ever sees it again. It's, that's not a document. But I do have a question for staff, and I don't want to put you on the spot. But my question is, given all of the questions that Mr. Malekian had, I mean, the biggest one I noticed was that they have trees and 9 inches of dirt. Did staff have the same concerns with this coming in, or was there a page that we're not seeing that you saw that explains some of these details?
Well, staff has a little bit of confusion because we're seeing planters shown on the site plan and on the landscape plan. So the planters that are shown...
You got to use...
Yeah,
It's like Charlie's Angels.
Why don't you use that?
It is a little. It's a little difficult to know when it's on because it makes no sound. No, this one doesn't work either. Yeah. So I'll do my best to speak up, and we'll see how it goes. So we see the planter actually shown on the site plan and the landscape plan. So that question didn't come up for us, and we're a little confused about having it mentioned because we think that the planters shown with the 9 inches is typical to what we typically see.
For a planter with trees? This is a planter with trees.
So I think what the confusion is that
is it the depth of the planter that there's a concern about?
The way that the section is shown is it has a 9-inch depression in the slab, and there's no indication on the section that talks or shows the depth of the planter. Obviously, on the site plan, it's showing there's a planter, but
yeah, I guess we very rarely
graphics.
Yeah, we very rarely see a section drawn through a planter, and so when we see that there's a 9-inch slab depression and the planter as well, we think, okay, this tree seems to be taken care of. This seems believable. Right. As far as our recommendation about the perspective, we didn't mean to suggest that the board should rely on that the perspective is accurate and that will go register through plan check. We are recommending that if this looks like is leaning towards a return for redesign, but if there's an option for approve with conditions, if you're satisfied with most of what you see in the perspective, then we can make certain before it moves forward to plan check that the elevations and the plans are matching all of the requests for details that you ask for. We can make sure that air conditioning is shown, that the egress is shown properly. We were focused, as I mentioned, on the improvement from the previous plan, and that the comments were answered.
Which I commend them. I think it's definitely a great improvement from what it was originally and what it has been now. My concern, and if you feel comfortable, if the staff feels comfortable that they can handle that, and I have no problem with it, but I can definitely pinpoint the areas that I have concerns with. And one of the major concerns that I have is simply the detailing of the building.
Okay.
But again, it's my colleagues, and if they feel comfortable, letting it go and not reviewing it again. But like, for example, this arch thing, and I think it's definitely a problem. And once they start analyzing what they've drawn, and it's not just the graphics, and it becomes more real, that arch is definitely going to get shallower, and it's going to get a lot more straight than have the arc. And with that, having that, that's going to have an impact on that's the main detail that we have. It's just a plaster and just windows and the arch, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I guess what I might put forth is that honestly, it is we're giving you choices.
Okay.
So it is a big responsibility for staff to take on a lot of this work with the applicant. So if we're to do that, we might take a little longer in this particular meeting, but we would want to go through item by item so that we and the applicant would have a level of clarity. So for instance, the archway, and either way, the applicant would need a level of clarity in order to proceed. So for instance, the archway is a recess rather than an opening. So if the board wants to suggest, okay, we're looking at this and we're feeling that this is a 3-inch recess and that would be sufficient for us, or a 6-inch recess or a 12-inch recess, because obviously a 2 or 3-inch recess can be done with furring and can avoid the floor beams, for instance.
If you'll excuse me with all respect, we've said before that we are not a design studio, and we're not here to design projects for applicants. And I think this does show the position that the way the ordinance is written now sometimes puts us in, of either totally denying something or passing it with a lot of conditions that then staff has to go and work with the applicant. But since this does fall under the old ordinance, I would like to make a motion to return for redesign with conditions and comments.
I would second that. And whenever it's appropriate to make a comment, could I do it now? I think that's appropriate because the good news for the applicant is also the bad news for the applicant. They sold me with that picture, but now it's incumbent upon us to make sure that at least a lot of the elements of that rendering get into the final design. So we bought it, and now we want to see it delivered.
So, Alan, why don't you, since you have the most specific comments.
I pretty much marked the areas that I had concerns with.
So just so that staff is clear, what I see is the recess. Did you want to specify a depth of recess that's sufficient for you?
I don't know. I don't know what their goal is, and I'm not sure even if they're able to do that. I just need to know how they're gonna maybe just cut a simple section from there, so for me to
understand. A wall section would be sufficient, and then
I think even if once they cut this section, they'll realize what I'm saying, because it's not going to work. The other thing that I was suggesting is maybe these arches, you have, nice windows here, and then these plasters stop with these windows, and then maybe this is wood, part of the window itself. So this is wood, and then you got wood.
So that's a wood mullion.
I mean, that's one. I'm not saying they have to, but those are the things. I mean, it's a very simple building. It's just windows and boxes and simple boxes. And so details like these definitely will enhance.
Yeah, we just want to get a level of
For instance,
clarity.
on their material board, they have one of the materials is foam moldings, but when you look at the elevations, I don't know where the foam moldings are going to go. I think it's that kind of thing. You know, we've said before, when you take on a historical style, like a Spanish style, it all becomes about the details.
Yeah,
and it's true, you don't know what the details are looking at this. It even says wood or aluminum. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I assume there's foam moldings, but it's not drawn on the plans.
Yeah,
So-
typically we recommend, we almost often, as you know, we almost always recommend against the foam moldings.
Right.
So if that wasn't part of our recommendation.
It's on the material board, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
it's right here. It's,
Yeah.
And
yeah, number,
Stephanie, I would say, Mr. Malikian's point about the air conditioning units, where they're going to play in this
Location of
project,
those
is visually a big part of the building.
is very important. We often ask for it, don't always have it shown. You circled this because it was different than this
that,
one,
and it's not shown on the floor plan, so
So
I'm not
that-
sure exactly.
what it is or how it fits in.
Yeah, the
So
la- the
more
landscape-
detail on that.
the landscape plan doesn't
Detail
show,
on that.
sorry. The landscape plan doesn't show, I'm not sure if it's showing any kind of enclosure for the private space. I see a line, but I'm not really sure what that is.
So,
Like, what is that?
clarify where the private
I
open
guess
space
the private
is.
spaces are on the second floor, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So the private open space is the balcony space. So that on the ground floor is common open space, and there is that conflict where this can't become an open space. Well, it can become an open space and also egress, but they need to show it correctly.
If they need egress, I'm not sure if they do. They do have access coming from the side,
But they
but I'm
would
not
need
sure where it's
access
going.
for those
yeah.
units.
And-
So this, I understand, on the landscape plan is shown incorrectly.
Right, I mean, you got walkway, concrete coming and then abruptly stopping here. I mean, is this really the transition we want to have? And just,
Okay, we just wanted to make sure that we were clear because we
Right.
want to make sure to
Sure.
get, it's our job to help
no,
facilitate.
the other thing is that with the AC, I mean, obviously, you got this lower, I don't know if it's the same pitch or it could be, yeah, it is the same pitch, but it's lowered. Maybe it's a good opportunity, maybe have a little parapet wall there, and then this becomes more of a mansard roof that dives into this. So it gives a little bit character on this.
Okay. Thanks, that helps.
And then the planter issue, just so we know that if they're planting 24-inch boxes and they want, if the intent is to have trees, then they need to provide enough space for them to grow.
There's actually a minimum planter depth for trees. It's 30 inches. So any planter that contains trees needs to have a depth of at least 30 inches.
Okay, but I think, shouldn't that still be on the plan, assuming it's something that's going to be built?
Yeah, it's on the site plan. They just want
yeah.
to show it on the
Yeah.
on the section. So I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds. 30 seconds. You better run.
I've been waiting 5 months for this, so
So,
it's good enough.
I mean,
Basically, all your comments are well taken.
if you can state your name and
Yeah, my name is Oksan Babakanian, Principal of Oksan Associates. The comments you made are all well taken. This is basically when we come to the board, it's not working drawings. It's just the stuff that we want to show you what our intention are. We have the plans, we have elevations, we have the perspective for you to see what is going to be the end result. Now, the working drawings, all the inches count and air conditioning, where it's going to be, all of those comes later on. Now, we can accommodate, if one of you guys ask for it, where it's going to go, we can do that. But this is not final plans. And there's lots of details, lots of sections. Like that section you saw is not cut at where the tree is. That's cut somewhere else, which is just the grass. So if you take that section and implement it where the trees are, it doesn't make sense because we didn't show that section. And on the site plan, we are showing where the planters are, and planters are 10 feet away from the building. It's shown there. Basically, and arches, yes, we have the elevation, we have this, and this is, again, detailing of how the detail, we know, and Mr. Malakian knows better, that architectural, you do your presentation, then you come back and do all the detailing about minute stuff that is going to be working detail. And we're glad, and we are going to provide, if you get approval with these comments, we will going to talk to Stephanie. We will show him all the details, air conditioning, the parking, the arches where they're going to be, so they're satisfied, and they're satisfied with it, so we can go on. Since last submittal, April 13, it's been 5 months. We have, every time if we have for one comment, we spend another 5 months, we better close the door and go. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, I'm not gonna have a discussion, but I'll just go ahead and comment back, and I don't think I should, but I'll go ahead and do it. It's taking you 5 months to get to this point. If I were you, I would have provided a lot more information, a lot more coordinated information. The working drawings that you're absolutely right, but the AC units, the trash, all of those impact the design, and we're approving the design. If the design changes, then it has to come back to us. So we're actually doing you a favor, and the 5 months, it's not up to us, it's up to you. If you can turn this thing around in 2 weeks, well, you need to follow up, and I'm not sure the staff may help us with that and the workload, but you can update this and be able to get this back in time. As far as the end result, you're absolutely right. Your end result needs to work, but what we want to see is we want to see an accurate set of drawings. What are we approving? We're not approving a conceptual design. If this was a conceptual, this would have been probably a preliminary review that we would have been reviewing. We're reviewing as a final design. You're welcome to stick around. There's a lot more other projects, there's a lot more other examples that how to put this thing together, and we have many projects that we didn't even open. We just approved it right off the bat because everything was pulled together. The style was there. All the details were there. All the information was drawn accurately, and that's what we want to see. And once that is done, then all we're going to concentrate on the design, and that's the intent of a designer that needs to happen and wants to have from us, to review the design and comment on the design, not the details and not the coordination of the plans. And that's not what we're here for. I'm not here to plan check your plans. I'm here to review the design. And when I look at the design and the perspective is not drawn properly, that's where we have a problem. So, as far as it's, again, the motion is on the table, and do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, this will be a return for redesign, a motion by Ms. Friedman and a second by Mr. Carter. This will roll call. This motion has the following comments. I believe that I will word them specifically, but they're with regards to the trash location, landscaping plan, parking plan with parking dimensions, AC unit location, and we'll work with the applicant to resolve the arch elevation
And the detailing,
system.
that's
the
most
detailing.
important.
Yeah, I think the applicant mentioned that it's going to get resolved in the working drawings, but I think these pointers these items that I pointed out, those items, if it's not resolved at this level, it's going to definitely impact the design at the working drawing stage. And so I just want to make sure that, we have a little bit of a better understanding what the end result is going to be. I know there's going to be tweaking. I know there's going to be, once all the engineers get involved, there's going to be changes, and especially the structural engineers, but, we want to at least coordinate the design as much as we can.
Understood. And with a
Return for redesign.
But just to clarify, I think the comments are asking for some more details and for some of the things. So it's not the kind of redesign where we're saying go and.
Okay, we're not going to have a discussion. This is just a comment. So
The staff can clarify that with you
Yeah.
afterwards.
I have one other comment regarding to the color palette, to provide a color palette with more contrast in colors. Is that
More than, well, I'm not sure if those are recessed, that may not be necessary at all. I wasn't sure if those were recessed or if it was just the colors. I actually didn't think they were recessed. I thought it was just a color detail.
I see.
So,
Okay. We do that.
Question for the board. We're wondering if this might be a candidate for continuance, since you're not necessarily asking for a lot of changes, but simply more information and clarification and coordination.
It's your motion.
That's fine with me. I'll change my motion and make it.
We don't often recommend that, but this does seem like.
Okay, I'll change my motion and make it.
And I will second that revised motion.
And I don't want to make it for a date certain because I don't
Okay.
know how long it will take them to come back, but that will get you much faster through the pipeline. So we'll continue it, and I hope that you can come back and get it approved.
Okay, so
That's
no
our
date
intention.
certain, though?
No,
date?
because I don't know how long they're going to
But
need.
I think we should have a date certain because it may go for months and months.
Well,
But the
When is that?
workload's pretty light.
Why don't we ask the applicant how long it will take him to...
Well, why don't we give them a month from today? You'll have 2 weeks to update it, and you'll get it in.
We need to review this. I believe staff needs adequate time to review the comments to make sure that they're addressed as
Okay,
well.
well, it's up to you guys. If you can have
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks is fine.
Okay. So you can work with Gabriel, it'll be on in 6 weeks, you can work with Gabriel, and he'll tell you when he needs the new information, okay?
So that's October 23rd. I'm showing. Okay, there's a motion on?
You know, and I'd just like to make a comment before we vote. I'm very ready to vote. Just to talk to the audience at home and us here in the room. This is a project that was a single-family craftsman home on this site. This was old Glendale. These were single-family homes on this street. So now we're going to replace it, as we have dozens and dozens of times, with 4 or 5 unit multifamily dwellings. So it's an important change to the street, not a change that hasn't been done dozens and dozens of times, but it is an important change. So we have every hope that the applicant will do a successful design.
And if I may make one comment about the historical analysis, deciding whether an individual property is individually eligible for the Glendale Register is a lot easier than deciding whether it's a contributor to a district or whether a district exists, whether there should be boundaries to a district, and what those boundaries should be. It's a really difficult thing to ask the owner of one single lot to survey for a whole district, which is why we have tended not to do that. I mean, I've had attorneys who are very pro-preservation advise us, don't do that. Don't make an individual property owner try to survey for a whole district. So it's a much more difficult thing to do, just as a matter
So
of
what you're
context.
saying is individually looking at this single lot may not be qualified for a historical registry, but if it was, if somebody went ahead and did a study for the entire block or the street length, may have been? Is that
No,
what-
I mean, we did go out and look at this particular block because we did have it's one of the few areas that actually had been part of an official survey. And adding this property to that potential grouping, our historic preservation planner still felt that it wasn't, that the grouping did not qualify as even a small district. But just in general, if it's an area where we don't have a survey, it's legitimate to ask someone to hire a professional to look at just their property, but it gets much more problematic
I see.
when you're asking someone to investigate whether they are part of a district which has not yet been identified. Because that gets into not only the expense of it, but questions that are really policy issues, like how do you set boundaries and what are context statements? Periods of context, I mean.
Okay, with that said, I have a motion to continue to October 23rd. This will be roll call. Ms. Friedman.
Yes.
Mr. Carter.
Yes.
And Mr. Malekian.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Just one quick comment. I don't see any wrongdoing as a staff. I think you did a great job. I think these are very, minor points that I picked out that it has to do more of the design level and architectural level that, when they're putting it together. I don't expect the staff to be able to pick these little minor things up. So just clarifying that.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, it's 2 PDR 2008-032-A. And this is, maybe you want to stick around and look at this set of plans, so that this is an example that I would give.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is a proposed 6-unit townhouse project on Holly Drive. The neighborhood is a mixture of older apartment buildings and a few remaining single-family houses, with the Adventist Hospital down to the southwest and the freeway off to the east. The property is characterized by somewhat difficult topography in that it rises up from the street to a sort of a plateau near the center, and then it drops fairly steeply down to the rear of the property. This is a new submittal first-time submittal for final review, and it is under the current DRB regulations. The project is a mix of 2- and 3-bedroom units with parking below. Each unit is a townhouse unit. The project is considered to be consistent with the general plan and does appear to be compatible with all the zoning regulations for the city. There we go. The mass and scale of the project generally is lower than some of the neighboring existing projects. The fact that this has been broken up into 3 structures and separated by the driveway areas helps to reduce that appearance. It helps to reduce the imposition on the neighboring properties, and helps it to sort of better fit into what the kind of project we would hope to be going towards, especially in this area. It does have a nice amount of landscaping and a nice mix of landscaping. The common open space is mostly at the back, with another area here. At the end of my presentation, I'll show you an alternative that the applicant has brought in that deals with that area. There's one error in the mass and scale section of the report. This project does not qualify for 36 feet tall or 3 stories because the property is not 90 feet wide. So the maximum is 2 stories or 31 feet. Overall, we believe that the project is a high-quality design using a contemporary architectural style and does have quality materials and details. The overall site plan is a departure from some of the existing pattern of development, but we think in a good way. We think it's an attractive and high-quality project. The alternative that the applicant has brought in, and here's reduced size sets of plans that will represent that. All it really does is slide the buildings, the 2 rearmost buildings, closer together to enable the common open space to all be gathered at the rear of the property, back here. Instead of in the alternative one, they've got a little common open space and some sort of common open space here between the rear 2 buildings. Now these 2 buildings have been slid closer forward, and then we've got a more substantial common open space area at the back. This came in relatively late, which is why we didn't distribute it to you before now. The applicant can also try to, explain any other differences that there are between the two properties. We received no comments from the neighborhood, and there is a 15-day appeal period for this project. We have one proposed condition, and that it's simply that the applicant work with neighboring property owners to try and have coordinated property line walls, so we don't have little gaps and things like this. This is an issue that is sort of a personal issue that bugs me when the walls end up like that.
Can I ask you a question while you're there?
Sure.
Oh, you're gone.
Stop poking myself with the pins.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. That's my
I have a
presentation.
question about the step-down retaining walls, what the width is between there, and if they're proposing to plant, because it looks really close together.
The step-down retaining walls really are only in the two corners of the property, not, at least in this version. Now, in this version, they've got step-down retaining walls all the way across the back.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the first version.
In the first version. So they don't have a spacing. It sure doesn't look like it's 5 feet, though.
Is there any kind of code about that? Or it can just be anything?
If it was the question is this considered an uphill or a downhill lot? And frankly, I'm not sure which this would be considered to be. Certainly the front part of the property is uphill from the street, but the back of the property is actually below the level of the street. In any case, consecutive retaining walls are supposed to be separated by 5 feet. So this may be a problem. I'll let the applicant defend that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
While you're walking, I'll just say, because if there is the space, it would certainly be nice to have something there, because they're going to develop that lot behind it at some point.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairman, board members, and city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, along with Rouge Soroyan, the applicants of the project. To answer the question, or to get first into the questions that the board stated, in terms of the common open space, I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll talk about the walls on the rear. The reason we came up with two different alternatives, one was the first original alternative put a portion of our open space in the middle of the site. We looked at that and thought really two or three different things. One was that open space actually is closely adjacent to the backup area of the vehicles for the garage, and probably thought that may not be the most desirable location for the open space. We also looked at, and I think that Jeff had alluded to it or mentioned it, is that the contours of the lot, as it goes to the rear, it kind of slopes back down. It starts up, creeps up, levels off, and comes back down. And the properties that are directly behind us in that direction sit lower than we did. So what it would be nice, or what we thought would be nice, was to move the building away from that so that there's a greater setback between our buildings and the buildings directly adjacent to us on the rear. And then lastly, to answer your question, Ms. Friedman, is as it relates to the retaining walls on the rear, the way we're able to do it is if we pull the building closer to the front and put the common open space on the rear, we actually require lower walls, or less walls, a less number of walls than we would in the other condition. But as it relates to the code issue about the heights of the retaining walls, you have retaining wall restrictions in your zoning ordinance that relate to single-family zones. It's not the 5-foot separations as you're used to with single-family R1, ROS, or R1R. There is not the same restriction in the multifamily zones,
So you can
which
have
is
a retaining wall?
R2250. That is correct. We do have, and it should be up there, our landscape plan that shows, I don't know if you have it in your smaller package on the variation, that there can be landscaping that's planted between the walls, so you're not looking at this one solid plane, even though it is separated.
On the second alternative, right? The first alternative with the open space in the middle, I don't know that you have the room there.
That's correct, but we do
On the
on the second
on the
alternative.
second,
So
right.
that's
So
correct.
on the first scheme, other than the stepping planters that you have on either edge, in the middle, where you have the bench and the barbecue, that wall is straight down.
That is correct. And then I hope I explained why we think alternative 2, or the second alternative for the location of the common open space, just seems a little bit more logical for the layout of the project. That's why we did what we did. I wanted to address your questions first. A couple more comments I'd like to add to Jeff's presentation. If you had a chance to go out to the site, or if you even look at the photographs, you could see that on the street along Hawley, it's a lot of overgrown vegetation. In fact, you can't even look onto the site, really, to see the existing structures. And then the contours of the site go up and are a little bit different, so we had to kind of play with that as it relates to the structures themselves. It is 3 duplexes, townhouse style, which is a very desirable feature, where you have your attached garage, you have direct access into your units, you have your living area on the ground floor, and you have your sleeping area, your bedrooms and some bathrooms on the second floor. In terms of the spacing, we had the site laid out. If we did a different type of project, we could have gotten 1 additional unit. The density allows for that. In terms of what's around us, if you also went out there, I think to the east of us is a 21-unit 3-story building, and to the west of us is an 18-unit apartment building that's also 3 stories. So we have much larger structures that are around us as it relates to the neighborhood compatibility, if you want to refer to that. We think it's a very straightforward project. We worked closely with the city staff. Our architect is here as well. If you have questions of myself or questions of Rouge, we'd be happy to answer them.
So I have 2 questions for you. Unit 102,
Yes.
as you come down the driveway, there is a garage door there. So as you turn, and then as you go around that, do you have another garage door? What is that all about?
That's a very good question. I asked the same question to the architect. The original garage door, we were told in terms of the turning radius, we had to have the one that kind of is oriented towards the driveway. Okay. To me, that seems very logical and makes sense because that gave us our turning radius, although we would have liked to have had it the other way. I'll allow the architect to explain why we have that second garage door that's facing, because I don't really understand why we have that.
But that's my first. Second question, between the last units, 106 and 105 and 106, it says tenant common parkings. What is that?
Because we have 3-bedroom units.
Okay.
And we have, the middle is 2 2-bedroom units. The front and the rear are 3-bedroom units, 2 3-bedroom units, 2 3-bedroom.
Okay.
So we require 2.5 parking spaces for the 3-bedroom units.
So are they going to share, those 2 units are going to share the middle parking space?
Well, we figure that each unit will have 2 enclosed parking spaces that directly go into that area.
Okay.
In terms of that, that's achieving or meeting a code requirement. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to allocate that parking, but we had to
I was
provide
just
that
thinking,
for code.
do you want to revise the doors so that you have a 2 and a 1, and then 1 and a 2, so it's like, okay. So I guess the architect will talk about it. Okay. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you. If you can state your name and fill out one of the cards after.
I'll do it later, sure. Good evening. My name is Rouge Soren. I'm the architect on record. I'm here to...
My question was that garage door, so I would love to...
Well, the garage door, we did the one that is facing towards the back of aisle just to balance the interior elevation. That's just solely because of that. There is no other reason.
And then the common tenant parking spaces?
Well, these 2 parking spaces will be shared by 4 units, actually, because we have 4 3-bedroom units, 2 on the front and 2 on the back.
Okay.
And 4 times half parking is required for the 3rd bedroom. Will add up into 2 spaces.
But you put a garage door.
I understand. That's a zoning code. All the tenant spaces must be fully enclosed and covered. That's a zoning issue. The guest spaces can be open or can stay open, not being covered.
Interesting. We're going to have a lucky tenant there. One of the units can be lucky enough to get 4 parking spaces, I guess.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I'm not an architect, so bear with me. This is a question that might be ridiculous, so I'm going to warn you in advance. Just looking at the natural slope that you have, and this is just curiosity, it's not meant to be argumentative. Did you ever think about stepping down the building in the back or even the common area in the back so that you don't have those large retaining walls and using the natural slope?
Actually, we have that version, that alternative. The issues that we started to deal with that is the light. If you push the last 2 units down, further down, will become sort of a half a basement type unit, then we were losing our windows or being able to open windows towards the sides and towards the back, towards the backup aisle side.
I was actually thinking even of just of the common area. If you drop it down, then you might be able to create more of a more private area as opposed to one that's right outside the units.
The common area, we can drop it down. We tried, to kind of live it or make it in the more or less in the same level as the units are, to be more accessible. But to answer your question or concern, yeah, it can be pushed down or further down.
I was just curious if you.
It is
if you thought
possible.
of it.
Just the common space itself is possible to push down.
There are minimum dimension requirements for common open space, though, so
I believe you need a accessible common
Yeah,
space,
there is.
correct? So you have to have a ramp and...
No. This is exempt from handicap.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I mean, this is one of the other, sorry to say, there's the benefits of doing that kind of a design.
I see.
That will be exempt from handicap accessibility. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more card. Is it Juan Jimenez?
Yes, good evening, Board. My name is Juan J. Jimenez. 20 years ago, I purchased 1711 Holly Drive and 1709 Holly Drive, which are separate triplex, one door down from where they're doing this project. My concern is, and I purchased them 20 years ago, my concern is they've been building a lot of units, and I've seen as they've built them, and they've turned out to be pretty good. But this particular lot, you've got to rappel down the lot, first of all, to get out of the house. It's very, very steep, and I'm looking at potential problems we're going to have there. The street is very, very narrow, and for anybody to build even anything greater than 3 units, it's going to be a disaster up there. There's no room to build anything up there. I've been there for 20 years, and I've seen it. And when I heard about this project, and I said, I'm not against anything in building up Glendale or nothing, but I see this, and it's going to be a real problem. I hope they monitor this project, on a regular basis. I don't know who that'd be, if it's a commission here or who does it, but I hope it's being monitored because it's going to be a problem once it's completed. And it's one of those things that I told you so. If somebody would have been monitoring a little bit closer, it would have been fine. But I'm very much against it.
Mr. Jimenez, just to answer your question, they are actually raising the back of the lot by placing retaining walls in the
I know
back.
that.
So they're going to have stepped retaining walls approximately 15 foot each, and they're going to build it up, basically.
And the reason why is because you say retaining walls. They put retaining walls from Glendale and Venice against my property, and they're gradually shifting over. We're on a creep, and it's just shifting over my lot. And they said we can't do anything about it. And they're not that high. They're only about 4 foot high. And I can imagine these retaining walls, they're going to have to be very high for the amount of slope, the amount of displacement you're going to have.
Unfortunately, that we're not going to be here to review and design their engineering parts of it, but we're just going to look at the design of the project.
As I say, I just want somebody to make sure that they eyeball it occasionally.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have any more cards. Rodney, you don't want to do, okay. I'll close the hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I may make one observation, Rodney was absolutely right when he said that for multifamily projects, there is no spacing requirement or height limit in the zoning ordinance. He'll just be adhering to building code requirements for those, basically.
I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I think as a direction to my colleagues, I think the first thing I want to do is let's concentrate on one set of plans. We've got 2 set of plans. Which ones, do you have a preference that we want to talk about, or do you want to talk about both, or?
We talk about both, I think.
Okay, all right. So,
Well, do you want to give some context to speaking about both? Do you have a preference for one or the other, or do you want to just go through both of them?
Well, I guess I'll just jump in.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the project. I like the buildings. I think the size is appropriate for the neighbor. I'm not sure I completely understand your concern in terms of the specifics, whether you're concerned about the building process and getting large machines. Sorry, I can't. I went up there. So I'm just saying I wasn't clear whether you're worried about the bringing in of construction equipment up there, whether you're concerned because the ground is shifting, whether you're concerned about the grade. I could understand that those are all potential concerns for you. I just want to clarify that we here as a board are pretty powerless in that regard because we look at the design of projects, but we're not engineers, and we can't do the soil surveys and all of those kinds of things. But building and safety does, and I do think even though there's not a commission that meets to review projects, there's certainly, I think you can go and speak to building and safety and talk about those concerns, and if there's things they can do to mitigate the impact of building in terms of machinery, that's the correct part of the city to bring that up, and hopefully they can address your concerns and make you feel more comfortable. I do sympathize with you, but we can't here as a board say, talk about the width of the street and things like that. It's just beyond the scope of our authority. Even if we agreed with you, we couldn't do anything about it. So let me just get that out. I think I'm going to let the other people speak to the actual, detailing of the buildings. I mean, on paper, they look very nice. My only comment was maybe that some other materials can be introduced, because if I saw the plans correctly, it's stucco, painted, mostly stucco without any other material. It might be nice to introduce another material. My main concern is just the open space, as it tends to be with multifamily. That's generally my concern with large projects. We don't have multifamily guidelines yet. It's a shame. That would give a lot of direction for applicants, for developers, as well as for us. My concern is always that people have the ability to use the outdoors, that projects of this size are not buildings floating amongst concrete. I know you're using the grasscrete. I don't know whether the grass will grow, but that's certainly the right idea, and I commend you for doing that. I just want to be sure that whatever's designed really utilizes the common area and the outdoor area as much as possible, and that's always my concern. So I'm not sure which of these plans. In general, I think that plans that put the open space to the middle of these kinds of projects that are more spread out are more usable by the residents. If you're in the front, to go all the way to the back, people just don't do it as much. I've lived in those kinds of buildings, so when they're more central, I think it really satisfies the idea of open space better. But I do understand that there's a trade-off in terms of what the retaining walls in the back. I don't know what they're putting in there. I don't know if anything's ever going to be built there. So I don't know how much of a concern that should be at this point, with those walls. I'm concerned right now with this particular property. I'm leaning towards the one with the open space in the middle, but I understand the idea, the concern of having that basically in the middle of the driveway, and that was, when I looked at it, that was a concern for me too. Not so much with safety. I don't think it's going to be that busy where people are coming and going all day long, unless you get someone who does come and go all day long. More just for the aesthetics of it, of wanting to sit there where you're basically sitting in the middle of a driveway. So that's my one big kind of hang up with the project. And I'm interested to see what the other people on the board think.
I actually gravitate towards the open space in the middle of the project, and I would say that the project overall benefits from comparison, because we see so many projects where the open space by law, by zoning, is so constrained, that it's sort of liberating to see a project that has some legitimate open space. We're used to looking at buildings built to the limits, and then a geranium on the corner. So I think you benefit from that just going in. And it's a legitimate talking point to talk about the parking in the middle of that and the desirability of that. And actually, I think we have to, in our conversation, play it out and think about those cars coming and going and, what that truly does to an open space environment. Having said that, I like the looks of the project. Seems like probably a quality project. Indicates a lot of flat screen TVs. That must be a new. I'll buy one of those right now. Yeah.
I like the project, and I'm glad that you brought the second scheme, because I think one of my concerns when I got the package was, even though I've been a very big advocate of having a more accessible common area, this particular project, it's considered as a carriage style buildings. And they're more of townhouses. People would drive, they park in, and they go into their units. The project the plans that I received, and if you study that a little bit carefully, what you end up having is and if I get my bearings right, you get almost a 20-foot tall retaining wall right on the property line that is about 4 feet away from the adjacent house. And that's what the first initial proposal is showing, which I think, having a common space, it's not substantial, but it's enough to give them the required common space that they're required to have. But when you really study what the impact it has on the south,
is it really
necessary to have that little common space there? And would it be more beneficial to actually take that space and put it in the back, push this building away, and be able to step this retaining wall and be able to get a much more pleasant space there and have the distance, a separation? I mean, you can literally stand at the edge and maybe if you're tall enough, you can reach and with a stick you can poke into one of those the adjacent building windows. So I think, to me, I'm glad that I saw this, and I like that, especially that having a 16-foot, 17-foot approximately setback from the property line. You have the potential of planting nice trees there and then having the distance there. So I think, to me, functionally, I think that works better. But having said that, obviously the common space is all set in the back, so being in the middle, the front unit is still going to have to walk there, and I don't know how much this is going to do for this unit, so I'd rather have a larger common outdoor space in the back, a little bit more usable.
But are there any other alternatives that you can think of that they haven't thought of to provide each building with some meaningful open space? I think that's more of what
I think it goes back to I've always said this with every multi-family house, and let's eliminate the common outdoor space and give that requirement to the private outdoor space and have a larger open areas and not really waste this space by putting it tucking back or in the middle or wherever it goes, and it's not the designer's fault. It's just the way that the code is written, and I think really the way that the mixed use code is written, that how it encourages the increase in the private that can be used as private, the common outdoor. I think
there's just more flexibility.
There's just a lot more flexibility in the design. Right now, we're basically stuck with we need to have a 10-foot wide space that is considered as a common, and we need to provide certain amount. So it really, to me, I think being in a townhome or an apartment, having a larger, balcony and being able to use that more privately and not dealing with the public and other, I think it works out a lot better. Couple other quick comments. I like the window, but in the actual finish schedule, it's not really specifying. It just says aluminum window. I just want to make sure that we go with a heavier profile, just like the window, and it's not really specifying any style or any company. So like maybe a Fleetwood or something that has a heavier profile. So I think it definitely will help. None of the elevations or I'm having really hard time trying to follow through the finish because the numbering and the coloring and the materials are really difficult to follow. So I'm not sure if there is any. It says metal flashing, so I'm not sure those awnings are plaster or metal. There's some moldings that are going around some of these windows. I'm not sure what they are. So if they're plaster, they're molding, what are they? So, and it's not really specifying on the material board. So I think by use of these metal and being able to kind of give contrast versus plaster and metal awnings and cabled, the straps and all of that, I think it'll definitely be a very nice project. But again, it's not really shown on the elevations. We don't have that on our 11 by 17. So other than that, I think my tendency is more of, this is what we're dealing with. So let's just try to figure out the two. And to answer your question, I really couldn't find any other space.
Well, can I ask a question? Maybe if the architect, can I ask the architect to come back
absolutely.
up? It would make me feel a lot better about approving it if it was possible to put maybe some trees up against the buildings in those driveway corridors. Is that a possibility?
You mean the driveway?
Or is it just all garage side, wall to wall, so there's no...
On the side, or it's not clear for me.
I mean, like along somewhere in here, just a few. Like if we were to, what's the other scheme? If we were to use this scheme, sort of...
We can have trees over here.
That would make me feel... Did you catch the gist of that?
Yeah.
Sort of what they're showing there a little more.
Yeah. We like your elevation. That's the problem.
If you could do that, that would make me feel...
That's doable.
Because then at least it's green when people look out the windows, instead of just looking right into the window across from them, and something with a canopy, so that, not a palm tree, something with a canopy so that it actually does that, so you're not staring right from window to window. Can you tell us what here is metal and just sort of take us through some of those details a little?
The awnings shown on the windows, they're metal awnings.
Okay.
And we have about 4 or 5 colors of stucco colors. And then the window shown there is aluminum window with a wider section. And specify the type of the window and the company or the vendor that we're going to be using that with an address and phone number and everything.
Oh, that's fine.
And then around the window, is there any kind of, are you proposing molding? Or?
These are really interesting details, but I'm not sure what. Like these?
Oh yeah, those around the garage gates or doors, we have a molding. It's not a foam molding. It's a precast concrete molding.
I see.
Yeah. But the windows are punched in.
What are these? These
are metal.
And then these are the same?
Yes.
Okay. What about the cap?
The cap is just flashing.
Okay.
Which is your preference in terms of which landscape scheme, do you think?
Landscape scheme?
Yeah, of the two options
The
you've
common.
given. which
Common
is-
open space.
Yeah, for the common open space, which is your preference for the site plan? The second one, the one that you put up today? Okay.
I definitely think it's going to be a lot less impact to the adjacent building. I think it's definitely building 4 feet away from a I think it's a really a bad gesture. And putting a
Okay.
20-foot wall in front of,
Okay, thank you.
So I thought that wall was only to the rear, so it's to the side properties as well?
Well, the way that it is, see this?
Yeah.
Natural. So imagine that this line. Let me
Oh, I see, so that's all retaining wall then, because
Yeah.
they're on a lower grade next to them?
Yeah, because imagine that this is your natural grade. But anything above this, they're going to remove. But anything below, so basically they're going to take this and then they pour it in here. But we're seeing the back, but on the sides, which is at some level, like for example, like you have a little bit of it here, and then
Maybe at the top there, Mr. Maliki?
there you go.
Oh, I see. Oh,
So you have walls there that are going to retain. I mean, you
Where's
need
the-
to retain this.
Where's the building on the left? It would just be, I see the one on the right. Is that the dash line? I can't see from here.
This is the rear. This is the one on this side.
A little hard to see.
Well, in this particular design, they're actually stepping down. So your common outdoor space at this level. So they're actually stepping down from there to that point.
So
Or
with the scheme that they like over here, with the retaining walls, then what's the difference? Are they going to be wider to where they can put something between them?
yeah,
or
basically
shorter?
what they're doing is right now what their plan is showing 10 feet setback. Showing 10 feet from there, from the property line to the building. So I'm assuming if it's drawn properly, from here to here is 10 feet. Well, right now they're showing, in this case, they're showing 10'6" from the retaining wall, the third retaining wall. So from this point, they got another maybe 17, 18 feet. So they're actually pushing this back maybe up to here. So this building is coming back about somewhere on this. Am I correct?
So would that give you the space, so you're still stepping the retaining wall down, would you have the
Right.
space to plant on that next step? Because I don't see that on the,
Doing that.
but there's no, okay, so let's make that then a condition that they plant
Yeah, they are.
something of size in
They're
there.
doing that.
Okay,
So they're stepping here. And wherever they have.
Something of size.
well, let me see, wait, hang on, let me see what
So
they
they
have.
are doing that.
I'm just, let me see, we just got this, so it's going to take us a second to, okay, so you do have it, you have proposed tree, okay, I see.
So I take it we don't need the condition then?
No, they already have it. So, but this area here, so that's just an open, are you
That's
planning
good,
on
that's
putting,
good.
is it just, it's shown as open now, but are you going to put,
Here. I think they're showing it on their
or a different page?
site plan.
I'm looking at, oh, okay. All I had was the landscape plan.
You know what, I don't think we got a reduction of the site plan.
Oh, here it is. This is, this one,
Crystal is,
this is it. This is the three-step one.
right, what's that? Those staircases?
No, this is board. See, this is the site plan for this, and this is the old site plan. So they actually, this should have been part of that.
We're just wondering if you have, for the
Oh.
proposal that you brought in today, whether you have a site plan that shows any kind of program for that rear space, that open space. That's all, because it's showing on the landscape plan just as a big,
I think you got caught.
As a second alternative, we have a landscaping plan and the site plan both.
that's what we're,
This full-size plan
show, I think, the level of detail you would be wanting.
Okay, that's
at
what, that's
the
what we're
back
looking
area.
for. Okay. Okay.
So we got walkways and
Perfect.
benches and...
That's what we were looking for. We didn't have that in this, so we just wanted to be sure you had something like that. Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with the project, with the addition of putting trees in between each of the buildings, as many as they can, though they're limited, but as many as you can do, and then I'm comfortable with it.
I am too, and if you'd like, I'd like to move to approve project 2 PDR 2008-032 Apple with, I'm sorry, was that a condition? Was that, yes, with Ms. Friedman's?
Which is to add as many trees as possible between the buildings,
And not palms, but actual trees with a canopy.
not palms.
And we're stipulating that the project that we're approving is, I guess we probably need a figure, how many feet from the rear property line with a common open space in the rear?
Yeah, it's the option B.
Option
The
B.
alternative, it's labeled alternative 2.
Okay, great.
And I'll make sure that my motion so names it alternative 2. Motion, second?
Oh, I'll second, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any more comments?
No, I think
And we
it's going
have
to be
the one-
nice project.
We have the one condition, and that we're, in fact, approving alternative 2 of the design. Okay, Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes. I'm going to take a 5-minute break.
Bravo. So,
All right, good evening, we're back. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The next item before you is Design Review 2008-039-A. It's a review of a proposal to construct a new 876-square-foot addition to an existing 1,156-square-foot mini-market building. The project is located at 3402 Foothill Boulevard in the C3 district. Let me just step up to the board and go over the plans with you. Pointer around. Okay, you're looking at the center board here. This is the site plan. Foothill Boulevard is here, New York is here. The existing building is here, and the proposed addition containing the equipment room and car wash is here. The floor plan. Elevation drawings are here. This is the front, or I should say the building facing Foothill Boulevard. This is the rear, so it would be this elevation looking. The New York elevation is here, and then the southern elevation is here. Just have the roof plans. This is the equipment building portion, and this is the car wash portion, and then landscape plans.
Is that it?
It is not it. I just need to sit down. The addition will include a 192 square foot equipment room, which is that small piece between the existing mini market and the proposed car wash area, and then also a 684 square foot car wash. The addition will be constructed on the west side of the current mini market building. A driveway to access the car wash is located behind the building, and new landscaping is provided along the southern portion of the site and within several landscape islands around the perimeter of the site. As you may recall, currently there really is no landscape on the site, so all of what's shown on the landscape plan is new, or proposed, I should say. Given that the existing development is on the site and access to the site will not change as a result of the project, the proposed location of the car wash is well suited, as cars utilizing the car wash will be separated from cars getting gas, and the existing building will mask cars waiting to enter the car wash. The 15 delineated parking spaces will help clarify on-site paths of travel. Also, as you may recall, there's a big paved area on the site, and there really hasn't been an organized place to park or to travel on the site. With delineated parking spaces and the landscaping, that'll help to sort of convey where you drive and where you park and not have a big mix-up there. New landscaping proposed will help buffer the existing proposed uses from the adjacent residential uses and soften the appearance of the site from the streets from New York and Foothill. Commercial development along Foothill Boulevard is generally small-scale, one-story buildings, set back relatively far from the street. The proposed project will fit in well with the context of the neighborhood pattern. Much of the design and detailing of the existing building will continue in the proposed addition. Materials include the white sheet metal panels, storefront glazing, and red fascia board. The existing faux stone base will be replaced by an Idaho stacked gray quartzite veneer. There is actually a material board that I did not point out below the site plan. As discussed in the staff report, planning staff met with the applicant prior to submittal of the design review application, and the architect has included suggested changes into the plans before you this evening. Staff recommends that the design review board approve the project, but has an addition to make regarding the staff report. The zoning code requires at least 75% of the trees used within the parking lot landscaping to be trees with a spread at maturity of at least 25 feet. There's a list in the zoning code of approved trees, and it also says that alternative canopy trees may be provided or may be used subject to approval of by the urban forester. The proposed Brisbane box tree is on the approved list. However, the yew pine is not. And so staff is requesting that the board add a condition of approval to the project requiring compliance with this code requirement. If the board is inclined to approve the project, the draft language contained in the staff report could be used as the draft record of decision. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First, what is that? Is that an easement that's to the side where their cars are parked now, or is that part of their property? Between the two, between the property on the west and the subject property?
That to the west.
They have a wall to the west, and then there's a channel, kind of. Maybe the applicant can speak to that.
Is that the sort of the unmaintained area of the site?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice any easement in that area.
So is that part of this site?
It is.
Okay, because that's not dealt with on their landscape plan.
No, it's actually not part of ours.
Oh, it is not?
No.
Okay.
So maybe we can find out what that is.
Maybe it's partly on, Rodney? It isn't at all. Okay.
Is that the property next door?
West of ours? Well, let's talk about that.
No, I'd rather shout back and forth across the room. Okay, that was one question. The other two, next question I have, they have a strip of pretty low power lines right where they're going to put all those trees on the back. So it's just something for you guys to address when you come up. That's number two. Number three, on the New York side, those curb cuts for your driveway, is that the width you actually need?
If we're going to ask questions...
I don't know if it's staff or... I don't know whose question that would be. I guess, is that the legal width that they need for each of those driveways?
It's my understanding the curb cuts are not changing.
No, I understand that. I'm wondering if that's the width they need, if they need to be that wide by code. And I have a reason I'm asking that. You can probably guess.
Additional landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I did not check. what's out there is not changing, and so I didn't look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe,
We did discuss with the applicants providing as much landscaping as possible on the site, since the site does not have any.
okay. All right, thank you.
Rodney?
Good evening again, Chairman and board members. My name is Rodney Kahn. The existing facility is a Union 76 station, and it sells gasoline, and it has a small mini-mart as it currently exists. In terms of some of the questions that have been asked before I make my remarks, the property that was in question that's directly to the west, it's not on our site. It's actually owned by the property owner to our west, and they park cars there, and the city has contacted them about that issue. That's not on our site. That's one thing. In terms of the curb cuts or the width of the curb cuts, primarily has to do with the delivery trucks and how they maneuver and get in and out of the site. They come in one way and they exit another way. So in terms of the width, now I don't know how wide those curb cuts are, but that's the existing condition as it relates to. And I was speaking with the owner, and he said they need this to be able to maneuver. We don't know the exact minimum dimension they would need, but that's an existing condition. You had one other question. I want to make sure I answer.
Power lines.
The power lines, yes, we did look at that. Part of this is not our first public hearing. We had a variance hearing for the project, and it was kind of an odd hearing that we had because it related more to our code definition. Even though we call this a self-serve car wash, the city code does not look at it as a self-serve car wash. It looks at it as a full-service car wash, just by a code definition. And just real briefly, it says a self-serve car wash means a car wash where the customer provides the labor, where there's no self-propelled wash racks. That in itself triggered all these variances to be required, even though nothing was changing. So all of our, in terms of the canopy distance and the orientation of the opening, all those different things triggered that. Thus, we had a public hearing. Our public hearing, during that discussion, we had members from the community that live nearby come and speak. We had detailed meetings with city staff, the zoning administrator, as it relates to the rear or south side of our property, where the lines are you're talking about. We have a significant amount of landscaping that we've introduced on the site itself. Right now there's zero. We are introducing about 3,700 square feet of landscaping on the site, which it desperately needs. So it's a significant improvement just for landscaping itself. On that south side, we do have trees shown. If there are issues as it relates to the amount of canopy trees we need to change to, certainly we would do that. If there's any interference in any of the lines, we will spot or locate those trees so that we don't have any type of conflict as they grow up. So we will be able to do that. In terms of the spacing of the trees or the landscape plan and the plant palette, if there's recommendations as to another species of tree we should be using that's more in your plant palette, we'd be happy to do it. The project itself, just real briefly, our architect, Mac Cambarian, is not here tonight. So the layout of the project, it sits where it sits because it is the most, in terms of traffic circulation, it made the most sense. In terms of the operation, it made the most sense. It does not interfere with the service station aspect of it, where you would get gasoline. It actually is very functional that it does not. The circulation path, as you've seen, makes a lot of sense. We work with traffic, both for the on-site and for the off-site circulation for this facility. It is something where the operator, the vehicle operator would drive in. They'd either get a code or a pass or card. They'd punch it in. They'd drive in. Their car would be washed, and then they would drive out and they'd leave. In terms of the existing building, the reason we're here today, the design of the building, the existing building will only change in respect that it will get a new facelift, a paint job, and the stone that is currently existing on the east side will be changed to the Coronado stone, which will match the Coronado stone that we're proposing on the new addition. Other than that, the colors, the materials, everything else will match the existing facility. The reason that the building or the addition is a little bit taller than the existing roof line has to do with the mechanical equipment that's needed inside of the car wash, which is, there's some equipment, the blower, the dryer, things like that, that is up in the roof. Therefore, that roof element or that height is a little bit different. That's pretty much it. If I'm forgetting to, if I can answer a question, I'd be happy to do so. I do have the owner and the operator here as well. If there's questions about that, he'll be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
We'll talk about that. But my question is, the trees that are being proposed, not the ones that are right behind the actual turn area, but the ones that are right in front of the parking spaces. And it seems like there's going to be 3 substantial trees there, 24-inch boxes, and fairly close to that retaining wall. How's that going to work with the retaining wall? I mean, is that going to be something that can be mitigated, or I mean, I'm not sure.
Mr. Malikian, I believe it will. We had our landscape architect actually go out to the site, and he actually went out to the site twice. He went out to the site for the variance, prior to the variance hearing, to draw up the plan, and he went out to the site probably about 3 weeks ago, Mr. Tyson did, to be able to see. I can't, I could defer to him if he was here.
No, that's fine. I'm just,
he did the research.
Okay, so as long as that's been thought of, so okay. All right. That's it. That's the only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You mentioned the owner's here. He doesn't have a card? You're not gonna, okay. Is it Roxanne Myers? Before you start, I'm sorry. Is it possible to get a Google map on the, is it going to be a problem? Not like a, but okay. I mean, do you
Not
have
on there.
Not on there.
Not on
okay.
there.
All right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can do it on my computer.
No. That's
Okay.
fine. That's fine.
I'm Roxanne Myers, and I'm one of the residents that lives close to the car wash and to the 76 station. And I'm not really happy they're building a car wash there, just in general, because we already have lots of car washes. But we're not here to discuss whether we're going to build a car wash there. But I just really, ask for more quality landscaping. Just like he's just said they're going to, but I just hope that it's enough, because right now there's like no landscaping, and the more landscaping the better. On top of, it would be nice if there was, because I can see the car wash basically straight from my house, and it would be nice if there was like a cover to go over the car wash door. I think that would be really nice, and in some cities that they do that. Also, or require that. I also, I'm concerned because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so I hear all day what kind of goes on in that busy area, because there's a lot of cars and stuff. And I get concerned about, because I even hear a lot of car crashes, because it's kind of like a busy intersection right there. And so I'm a little bit worried about, like, when you come out of the car wash, like if your car's coming out of the car wash and you're going to make a, that's also where the gas pumps are. So you can pull in there, and there's the gas station. You drive into the gas station. It's like the same exit and entrance to the gas station, and also to come out of the car wash. And I'm just wondering about the space issues, like will there be enough space, or adequate space to come out of the car wash, as far as its proximity to the gas pumps, because people are going to want to pull in to go into. And I don't know if that's something that can be worked on with the curbs. I don't know. Maybe arrows painted. I don't know what that looks like, because, like, from my point of view, it's like there's so many cars there, and it can be so confusing. And in back of the gas station and the mini mart and all of that, there's also tons of cars, like, just parked there. And I'm just wondering, like, how clear is it going to be, you know, just where's the car wash coming in and out? Is there going to be arrows and that kind of situation? I just feel like there needs to be a lot of definition about the workings of it, because, you know, I don't, you know.
Were you able to see the plans that they prepared? I mean, were you able to understand and read the plans?
I looked at these
Do
ones.
you understand what it is?
The only thing I don't
Did somebody
understand.
explain to you what it is? Maybe what you want us to explain to you?
Maybe just the entrance, that, like,
The way that they're proposing, right now, you have all these parked cars there. Obviously, it's not going to happen. What they're doing is they're proposing landscaping all along here, and a substantial amount of landscaping, almost 11 or 12 foot wide strip of landscaping. And there's also a lot of 24-inch trees that are going to be planted here.
Okay.
So behind the wall there. This is how they're proposing that when they come in, it's going to go around the turn, and it's going to go in and come out and go straight out. That's going to be the circulation path for the car wash.
Okay.
Roxanne, could I just ask you, what is your address? Do you live on New York?
New York, yeah. So I'm, like, by the car dealerships on the north side.
You're on the north side of the...
Yeah, I'm, like, by Trader Joe's and High Star Auto.
Okay. So you're not immediately behind
No.
the source?
No, I'm just saying in general, you know, because I hear all the accidents. It's like, I don't want a situation where, like, just coming out of it, I'm wondering just if there was adequate enough space to come out, make a right turn, and people could still pull in to get gas, because it's, like, right on the corner there.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. Michael, Robbie?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Roby. I live at 4442 New York, which is to the east I'm down on the bottom corner of the pointed part there. I'm just across the street from that. My concerns on this, they were a lot more before I got here and saw the plans. My biggest concern is the noise. You know, if they're going to have blowers and things like that, blowing off the cars to the back, because I'm concerned about people behind the place along with me. How high is the wall at the back? Is it just 4 or 5 feet, or is it 8 or 10 feet? I mean,
the way that the section is showing, you have to the south, meaning
back, the top elevation there.
Okay, so this is the south and this is the north.
Right.
This is foothill. About 18 to 20 foot difference. And
how high is the wall above that, though?
Above that, it's another, I believe, 6 feet. It says here, 5 to 6 foot high concrete fence.
So if they could go a little bit higher, go up, or go 5 feet and then put a 2 foot fence, you know, wooden fence or something across, just to help block the noise from that, because those blowers are noisy.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a friend that had a mechanic shop down on Blocker Center and Foothill. The blowers came on across the street at the car wash there. It was, you know, sounded like a freight train coming through or a hurricane. You know, if that could be addressed somehow, or put in thick bushes, you know, that would grow up and help block the sound, that would be great. Be almost better than got a 6 foot wall with bushes that grow up to 8 or 10 feet, oleanders or something along those lines. And the other thing is the vacuum station. They have it down between the 2 driveways on New York.
Vacuum station?
Yeah, there's a place to vacuum your cars out. It's on New York, the New York side between the 2 driveways. It's right.
There's an air. Oh, here. Oh, I see.
There,
Okay.
yeah, there. If they were to move that up to the corner or up on Foothill and New York, that gives it a little more distance between my house and and the and the vacuum station. I don't know how loud they are. I know the technology's gotten better, so they're not quite so annoying. Or put the vacuum thing inside of a block wall to hold the sound in, or insulate it somehow. I don't know. I'm sure there's all kinds of solutions to the problem to mitigate the sound.
Right.
And the only design part of the building, to the car wash. I assume it's a slanted roof above the windows there, and on the back actually too. I don't know if they continue that. It might have to go up a few feet, but continue that across the front of the car wash part and on the back to kind of just soften the look a little bit. That would be, those are the kind of things I was so I didn't know what this project looked like or what it was. I thought it was more of a real, full-size car wash. It's not as bad, but there's just a few changes. If they can make those pretty easily, I think. Maybe, like she suggested, maybe those plastic curtains that hang down across the front of the exit of the car wash to mitigate the sound coming out.
We got the picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yvonne Wolf?
And I don't know if I have a picture here, but actually we look directly at this. And the way I look at it is we're going to be open.
Excuse me, while you're talking, could we see your picture?
Yeah, I sort of
That's okay.
made this horrible rendition of.
Great, thank you.
So it's not a good view to begin with. It never probably will be. But I'm just concerned. I know that they're kind of reviewing the Crescenta Valley plan and maybe hopefully carrying that on. And I know one of the things that they didn't want is any more car-related businesses, which this, of course, is. I know the planning's approved it, so we're kind of, not a lot we can do. But my major concern is noise. Noise levels up. We live above the freeway. Of course, we hear the freeway all the time. I don't want to hear this car wash. Several residents up above, and the noise will be tremendous. There's nothing blocking this box. I call it a box because it's just a big open box. I know the planning department mentioned Foothill, but because of the way the driveways are, there's no way you can put any trees there. If I'm correct, I believe she had mentioned that because there are no trees along the curb at all. So my thing is I would like to see that somewhat hidden, the front of it, and covered. And I know there's other cities. I think there should be doors required on the car wash for the following reasons. The doors would screen the view of the internal car wash equipment, decrease noise, and prevent overspray near the entrances and exits to the car wash. The car washes can rapidly become unsightly if not regularly maintained by the on-site employees. There should be a condition of approval be added to require that the car wash area be cleaned of all debris and pressure washed on at least a biweekly basis to help maintain a more desirable car wash appearance. I don't know if there's like detergent or whatever comes out of it, but it just will probably look ugly. And I just kind of think with the overall view of what they want to do to Foothill, I mean, it looks okay, but would you want to look, when you drive along Foothill, it's just this box facing you, and I don't think that's attractive. So that's my main concern, and the noise. It's noisy enough there, and like Roxanne said, when you drive in, if you'll notice, the entrance to the car wash, there's basically a bus stop between them, and then the rest is really open, for driveway. And, people do pull in, coming down Foothill to New York, they pull into the gas station, and the cars will come out of the car wash. I don't know how, you can stop that. It may not be a problem, but I just like to see something covering it to make it look more attractive. I mean, the landscaping in the back is nice, but that doesn't prevent the view from Foothill. And I thought part of the whole thing is we want to make Foothill look nicer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rodney? Yeah.
Once again, Rodney Kahn. I'll try to address some of the stuff that's been brought up. In terms of the most recent or the last speaker, there is substantial landscaping on the rear that we're providing. But if you also look at the plans, there's planters that we're introducing along Foothill and along New York as well. So it's not just there's new landscaping on the rear of the property, there's actually landscaping throughout the property. There's new planter areas that are going to be adjacent to the building. So it's different locations, different site. There's going to be landscaping proposed throughout. In terms of the traffic comment, I mentioned during my original presentation, we work closely with City of Glendale's Traffic and Transportation section for our on-site circulation as well as our off-site circulation. And I think the chairman addressed how this is going to function and the circulation pattern that we're using for the car wash and how that's going to work. There is spacing between where the car wash is exiting and where people could enter onto the pump islands as well. So there's not going to be a conflict there. The one gentleman talked about, I guess all the speakers talked about noise, but the one gentleman talked about the location of the vacuum units. Typically, if you go to car wash, you see, typically if you go to a service station, you see that the vacuum area is near where the water and air typically is. And what we wanted to do and what we did was we wanted to remove that location or put it away from that location so there wouldn't be further interference with on-site circulation. So that's why we shifted it to a different location. So it made sense to us to have it away from that area in terms of the proximity and where it's at. We thought it was a good area on the lot to place it so that two cars can be in that area. As it relates to the grade difference, and I think Mr. Malikian talked about that, we actually sit about 20 feet higher up. In terms of the existing wall, there's a 5-foot wall. The one gentleman talked about raising the height of the wall a couple feet. If that was with some fencing or whatever, if that was so desirous of the board, we wouldn't have an objection to that in terms of raising the height. Let me see what else. The landscaping itself and the materials, I mentioned that if you guys have some suggestions or recommendations different than what we're proposing, we're more than happy to listen to what that is and to introduce those types of plants other than what we're showing here today. But once again, there is landscaping in different areas or different sections other than just that.
Rodney, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And although I'm cognizant of the fact that noise is not specifically the purview of design review, in the actual plant, in the actual car wash there, have you discussed noise and the impact of that? And with them, is this a template, this car wash, or is this a one-up, or is this something that you get there's 50 of these in Ohio? And
no, I think it's a pretty standard design. Let me address.
But just talk to us a little about noise, yeah. And I'm for the residents as well as for myself.
As part of our conditions of approval, and I'll talk to it a little bit about there, and then I'll talk to it about design issues, we have a limited hours of operation. So we have hours of operation for the car wash is limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Mondays through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturdays, Sundays, and other holidays. So we're not going to be having this car wash operating at 9, 10, midnight, or anything else. It's not a 24-hour car wash. We're very restricted as to the hours of the operation. That's one element as it relates to noise. The second thing is as you could well imagine, the blower for the car wash is typically at the end of the car wash, at the end of the cycle, so it would be oriented towards the Foothill Boulevard as opposed to the rear residential on the back. There is that grade difference that I talked about, so as the one lady pointed out, noise does travel up, and there is also a substantial setback that our building has, about 45 feet from that rear property line.
What about the door idea?
I'll tell you what the problem with the door idea is, and this is from the car wash manufacturers themselves. What happens with a car wash sometimes, when people are driving into the car wash and there is a door, sometimes people panic. And you have issues as it relates to people being in a car in an enclosed area. And they've had concerns about that. There's been safety issues about that. I mentioned to the operator, is there a possibility of some type of this plastic that you were talking about, something like that? And he said, well, that's not something that they would typically do. That's not something they've explored. But they really have issues as it relates to the panicking of people as they get into the car wash. We are hoping that the limited hours of operation, the landscaping that we're proposing, and we don't see a high, significant volume of this car wash. It's actually an amenity to the service station use. So we would not want to be restricted to have to put the door on there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Session's closed. Either one of you.
Sure, I don't mind. First, I want to thank the neighbors for coming. It's always good to hear from the community to know how things are going to impact and what your concerns are and how we can try to address them. I think you guys realize that our scope of authority is very, very limited. If we could wave a magic wand and say, let's make this a coffee shop or something like that, I would be happy to do it. But we can't. You have a gas station now, and it's not even completely a new use. They're just adding something to their gas station. So you may have had a chance with zoning with that, but we have no authority. So all we can do is to try to work with the design to mitigate your concerns the best we can. The biggest way we can do that is with the landscaping. And the good thing about this is that now the owner is going to add a lot of landscaping and hopefully improve the site to where it will be less of an eyesore than it is right now. And all we can do is to try to have them put in as much landscaping as that site will take, which is what my goal is. Well, actually there is some, I
can't have cross communication. So.
Well, right now what they've proposed is shrubs in the front, and actually one of the things that I would like to do is to change that and make that a condition that they're changed to trees. Not in front of the sign, but actually in front of the pumps, because they have the space to do it, and there's no reason that can't be trees. Yeah, it can be. It can be small trees like crepe myrtles, redwoods. There are trees that are, not giant, that are, 10-foot type trees that will give some visual relief. And Foothill Boulevard, if it needs anything in that area, it desperately needs landscaping and green. So that's one thing. Now, they have a real problem in the back with those power lines with the species that they've indicated, I think. I might be wrong. I'm not a landscape architect. I just live with one. And what my suggestion is I know that you guys are going to fall out of your chairs back there, but just hear me out. I actually think you're going to have an easier time in the long run with oaks because they're smaller, number one, they're shorter trees, and they can be pruned around the power lines. They don't go straight up. They kind of spread out, and when you prune them when the branches are small, you can actually let them grow around. And actually, if you drive down New York, you'll see a lot of examples of oaks that are growing right underneath the exact same power lines that you have, and they're big, and they've been successfully pruned to grow around the power lines without interfering with them. They don't blow around in the breeze the way some other trees do. They're fairly heavy. I actually think maintenance-wise, you'll have an easier time with them in the long run, and they don't grow as tall. And they grow very well in the area, and that's the other thing. You already know they grow because they're all over the place there. And it would be such a great thing for the neighbors. They're all nodding their head to have, even if not every single one, but to have, 5, 6, 7 oak trees there. I don't know if I'd make that a condition, but I certainly will do what I can to
We're writing that down.
Okay.
Well, we typically We'll maybe craft a condition that the applicant work with the arborist. We typically don't like to condition protected species
Right,
in an area we know that there will be required pruning.
Okay, well, I understand that. And like I said, the other trees, the other oak trees that are street trees on New York are thriving. They're under the exact same power lines, the same conditions that you have now, and that's not a problem there. It won't be a condition that they're oaks, but you can work with the arborist to do something
My main concern is that I know we're planting there, but we're planting against a 20-foot retaining wall.
Yeah.
So.
Well, here you're not as much of an issue because they're further in.
But
maybe
right now it's
they may not work. Like I said, I haven't looked that closely at the site, but you can work with the arborist. The arborist will certainly know whether it's possible and be able to help you. But I am concerned that the trees that you have proposed are more upright, and what you really need is more of a canopy there and dense, so that the neighbors are shielded with both visually and from noise. So, as dense and kind of big and not so tall, more wide to give shade, and all of that would be my recommendation. I also would like to condition, I don't know how to do this, that these trees are allowed to grow as canopy trees. Sometimes we see situations where landscape firms or businesses will, because maybe they're dropping leaves or whatever, will just want to hack them off all the time. Because it's really for the benefit of the neighbors, there has to be some way that, and it needs to be clear that part of the approval is that these trees be maintained as full-fledged trees and be allowed to grow large. I know that piece of property on the side is not yours. It's a shame. It would be great to plant along it. I don't know if you can come up with some kind of a arrangement with your neighbor so that instead of a bunch of cars in there, it's planted. That would be great, but it's not your property. I was going to, one other is around those, the vacuum pumps, that strip, I have the same request as the front, which is to, instead of having shrubs there, to have a couple of trees there on that side. That's on the New York side. Right, you know where I'm?
Yes.
Okay.
Landscape Islands adjacent to New York Avenue should have some trees.
Should have trees, yeah. I know that they don't want to do it in the very corner because of their sign, but certainly around the air condition, the vacuum thing, they should be able to do that.
Yeah, we would agree with that. I think the place that there would be some difficulty is just in front of the canopy that covers the gas pumps. Well, the way I'm reading the plan that I have on the computer is that that's a 3-foot planter outside to outside, which gives a very small section, depth for the tree, as well as if there were a tree that could grow in that area, it would have to be an upright tree. Maybe a poplar would work, so it doesn't interfere with the canopy.
We were thinking something like a crepe myrtle, but maybe they can work with the arborist. You see the intent. Something small, upright, crepe myrtle, something like that doesn't get very large. And then the other thing in terms of the building, so I'll switch off of the landscaping, but certainly the intent is to put as many trees, as much landscaping as they can possibly squeeze on that lot to where, people aren't running them over. And staff can work with them to help make that happen. And the plan that they're showing has quite a bit of landscaping. So I actually think in that respect, you're going to be looking at a lot better. I would agree to ask them if the neighbors wanted to put the extension on the top of the wall.
I think it would be much easier for them to build a wall behind the existing retaining wall and build it right in within the landscape area and just build a 8-foot wall, I think, with its own foundation, then put the 2-foot on top of the retaining wall. I think you're going to have a hell of a time.
I wouldn't condition that then, because it might take away some of the landscaping, and it's not a good trade-off. I'd rather they just have trees there, and hopefully that won't be an issue. In terms of switching to the building, one thing that we always ask for is when they do siding, that it wraps around so that it's not just one bit of siding. It's a small addition. It's not, some huge thing. I mean, it's a big impact, maybe, hopefully not, but in terms of noise and that, but visually, it's not a big change. I'm not sure that the new proposed building has a lot of relation to the building that's there, but given what it is, I don't know if that's, if that's such a concern. But
I think at least go back one bay. Wrap the stone.
Right, yeah, okay. What Mr. Malekian said was when you wrap the stone, to go back sort of one bay,
Or one,
so that it's not just like a foot,
to the
but...
joint there in between the windows, I
Want to
guess.
show them on the plan?
Is that clear? Just going back up to here, maybe? Sure.
That's pretty much all I have right now.
And I'd like to compliment the residents for coming down here, and I've sat in the seats where you are sitting now and made comments to this board and other boards, and you've just proved the theory that you will always be last on the agenda, and you'll be here the absolute longest time that you can possibly be. And that's the same as when you address City Council. But we thank you for coming down here. And looking at this project, I concur with Laura's comments that we as a board, although we're constrained in what we can address, we're a design review board, we will harp on the landscaping aspects of it. But looking at their plans, and as you see them up there, they have proposed, as plans that we see on a regular basis, a fairly generous landscaping plan, especially on the rear of the property. Now, of course, you all and we all wish that that was a wall of trees on the front of the property, but it's not really practical along the business side of it. So Laura's great notes about at least making sure that in those planters there are some trees that'll give some size and obscure some of the busyness from it. The gentleman's remark that we've adopted to sort of wrap the design elements of the building is a note that we have given on other projects, wrapping around an effect so it has a uniformity. So your bona fides as a deputized design review board member is now complete. So, Alan,
one quick comment, and then I'll finish this hearing. It's a very interesting photograph. The reason that I'm saying is that this photograph is taken over two streets, one major street, a parking lot, and then looking at a gas station, and we're concerned about the noise that is going to come across Foothill Boulevard, go over the parking lot, go over the street, and it's going to impact. So I think, having said that, it is a gas station. It is a location that it wasn't an empty lot, that they weren't proposing something new. Having said that, I believe the most impact that this car wash is going to have on the south side as far as the noise. And I think what they've done is they've planted fairly adequately. I think and one question that I have for consideration is that the planter that is being placed on the foothill side, it's giving a minimum dimension of 13 something, and if there is a room to decrease that and widen that planter area and basically extend that planter from driveway to driveway, I think it can be a lot more substantial amount of planter, and at least it'll cover all the pumps. Let's put it that way. There's also a little section between the air and the water station and the I may just show it to you here. This dimension that is 13.4, I'm wondering if it's possible to go 12 foot or whatever it can be, because this is going to be a new planter. I was just wondering if this can be a little bit wider, so that included with the trees there's some bushes and some lower shrubbery there. Also, with this planter, if there's room to put a little bit more planter. Obviously, you need to access the back, so you can't go. So there's a little room there. I understand that. I understand your concern about this. So I think if you can consider relocating this at another location, it's a consideration. I'm not sure where you can put it, but yeah. So see if you can figure out a location. It's a consideration. Also, there's no note showing about the existing paving, and I'm not sure by the time you're done with all these planters that you're going to be placing, and I don't know on your site plan it just says existing AC paving, so the planter will need plumbing and irrigation and everything, so you're going to be cutting that paving all over the place. So I think I want to propose or ask you to replace the paving or somehow add a new slurry coat over that and maintain that. As far as the height of the car wash, there's a substantial amount of parapet height there that I'm not sure if it's really needed. So see if you can consider dropping that parapet height if you can. I mean, I didn't see any equipment there. I didn't see any, and you actually have an access ladder going up to that. I understand that you need the height of interior height, but 4-foot parapet it's a cost savings to the owner also, and it'll lower the building. Other than that, I don't have any. I think Laura and Mr. Carter did a great job covering other. If you're going to increase the height of if there is a possibility, I don't know how you can do it, but if you can figure out or consider raising that wall or the retaining wall or the CMU wall, I would probably do it within the section that you're adding as far as the car wash. Don't take it all the way out, because even though we're trying to mitigate the noise, on the other side you have to realize that wall is going to get, rather than 21 foot, it's going to get 24 foot. So I think it's going to get a lot taller there. So I think I'm more concerned about that. The noise, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think the landscaping and the wall that you have, and especially that you're 20 feet above the other, I don't think it's going to be a problem. If you're going to add a wall, I think it'll be a lot easier if you put a wall away from the retail, at least 5 feet away within the planter area, and just paint it orange or something and put some signage or something there, and so that becomes a barricade. So and my last comment is that the trees are going against the retaining wall, so I'm insisting on somebody look into that as far as the architect or the landscape architect to understand the roots and how it's going to impact the existing retaining wall. I don't think they will. Yeah. All right.
If the site is planted properly, if it's planted the way that this board intends it to be planted, I don't think that you're going to maybe have the same feeling about wanting the wall raised, because hopefully you'll have a green wall instead that serves the same purpose without, has a better look. So you're nodding your head, so you agree. Okay.
And I would just like to comment on Foothill and that whole area up there. If you sort of look at the photos that we look at the area there, you could say that this is outside Phoenix or something. The Foothill in itself has a deficit greenscape that we'd hope that this project would put a little tiny dent in. So, having said that, I will make a motion to move case PDR 2008-039 Apple to approval with conditions.
Is there a second?
I would like to hear the conditions first.
Sure. Okay.
First condition is plant trees within the islands along Foothill Boulevard and New York Avenue. Consider oak trees very adjacent to the residential, preferably reinforcer to fund the music.
Yeah, that provides a large canopy, and that will... Did you get Alan's comment? Oh, yeah, all the plans, including the one leading up to the car wash itself. Okay, sorry. I'll stop talking.
To write it down. Next one, proposed tree shall be allowed to grow. Or the next condition, the stone veneer should wrap around to the rear elevation. Consider extending planter adjacent to foothill from driveway to driveway. Consider relocating vacuum area to accommodate additional landscaping, and I didn't quite get that whole comment. Is that correct?
And noise, and to keep it further away from the residences and closer to foothill,
Okay.
if possible. That's a consideration.
That's a consideration. Okay. Consider repaving site or adding a slurry coat. Consider reducing the height of the parapet of the car wash. Consider raising the CMU wall adjacent to the car wash. And that was it, actually.
Adjacent, behind the car wash.
Behind the car wash, I'm sorry.
And there was also, in regards to the trees, also a decision to work with the arborist to find the right tree for the rear planting against the retaining.
Right, and there's a few others.
Okay.
If possible, to extend the planter that's on the corner of the property, on the,
I already marked the plan. Oh,
what corner is this?
Is that adjacent to the residential?
No,
or,
the other
or
side.
the street?
you talking about this one that
Yeah.
I said? I already marked.
Yeah, but he needs to have it as one of his comments,
Is that the street intersection?
Right here?
to see if that can be extended.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
if possible, to extend that. and that would be a
Extend planter,
as far as possible. I don't know what's
is
possible.
that like the
but-
west? I think it's the
Along the
west.
side property line.
Yeah.
Right, along the side property line.
Okay.
To lower the parapet on the car wash as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's a condition. You got that? The wrapping, did you get the wrapping of the
You
stone?
got the wrapping, yes.
You weren't listening, were you?
No, I guess I should have been writing them down. We're crossing those Ts and dotting the Is and all of that. All right, I second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
And Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
This project has a 15-day appeal period.
I think we're going to continue the minutes.
Right. Yeah,
So-
I don't think there's enough people or the
Okay.
right people are here to do
Yeah.
that.
So then I guess we're done,
Return.
right? We're adjourned.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.